He forged my father's will. I said it out loud, but no one was there to hear it. Just me, the low hum of the fireplace, and the crackling silence in my study. The words felt heavier than anything I'd spoken in years. There it was, in front of me, the real will, my father's real, hand-signed will. And it wasn't the one my son submitted to the court. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I'm Mitchell, 65, retired lawyer. I've spent 4 decades fighting liars and thieves for other people. I never thought the biggest case of my life would be against my own son. It was President's Day. I'd invited the family over for dinner. The theme was leadership, what it means, who deserves it, and who doesn't. I'd cooked the meal myself, even laid out some of my old law school books on the shelves for effect. I thought we'd talk about legacy, values, maybe a little politics. Instead, I found myself staring at proof that Kyle, my son, the golden boy, the rising state senator, had rewritten history. $10 million. That's what the family trust was worth. A fund my father built up from nothing. And Kyle had submitted a will that made him sole executor. A version that conveniently left out the original trustees, my sister Vanessa and me. A version that wasn't just suspicious. It was criminal. Last Thursday, Vanessa called from Maine. "Mitchell," she said, "I found something in one of Dad's old lockboxes. You need to see this." The original will, dated a month before the one Kyle filed. Same language, same formatting, different signatures, different terms. I reviewed them all weekend. He did it. He committed fraud. And tonight, we confront him. I'd serve him roast beef and roasted truth. The table was set for 10. Candles lit. The house smelled like rosemary and tension. Kyle showed up first, right on time, wearing that politician smile and carrying a bottle of wine I knew he didn't pay for. "Dad," he said, handing it to me. "You really went all out, huh? Smells like a $10 million meal in here." I smiled. "Sit down, Kyle. We'll toast to leadership in a minute." By 7:20 p.m., everyone had arrived. Chelsea, his wife, looking bored. Lindsay, Aaron, and Trevor, chatting in the corner. Vanessa came last, walking in like she had a secret, which she did. We sat. We ate. Kyle raised his glass and gave a little speech about the future, about stewardship, about taking responsibility for the family legacy. I caught Vanessa's eye. She gave me the signal. I reached into my coat pocket, but before I could pull out the envelope, Kyle leaned back in his chair, twirling his wine glass like a villain in a courtroom drama, and said, "Oh, and by the way, I've officially restructured the family trust. From now on, I'll be managing all disbursements personally. Grandpa would have wanted it that way." The room froze. My fingers gripped the envelope. Then Lindsay stood up slowly, her face pale. You forged the will, didn't you?" All eyes turned to her. Kyle's smile vanished. "What are you talking about?" he said, his voice sharp. She looked at me. "Uncle Mitchell, tell them." I took a deep breath and pulled out the will. The second the will touched the table, the air changed. You could hear the wine glasses vibrate from the tension. "This," I said calmly, unfolding the document, "is the original will, dated 3 weeks before the one you submitted, Kyle. Signed by my father, notarized, witnessed." Kyle stared at it like I just pulled out a loaded weapon. "What the hell is this?" he barked. "Dad, what are you doing?" Vanessa reached into her purse and slid over a copy of the envelope. It came in, postmarked from my father's safety deposit box in Bangor, Maine. "This is where we found it. You remember that bank, right, Kyle? The one you never mentioned in court." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not real. That's fake." "No," I said, keeping my voice even. "The fake one is the version you filed last month. The one that mysteriously made you sole trustee of a $10 million family fund." Everyone at the table was silent, except Trevor, who let out a low whistle. "Dude, did you really do that?" Kyle stood, pushing back his chair so hard it scraped the floor. "You think I would forge Grandpa's will? My own grandfather? I was the one who spent the last year managing his medical care. Where are you, Uncle Mitch? Writing closing arguments for people who don't exist anymore. Low blow. But I didn't flinch. I was honoring your grandfather's last wishes, I said. You were rewriting them. Chelsea crossed her arms, looking suddenly pale. Kyle, please tell me this is some misunderstanding. He turned on her. Don't start. Not now. I didn't marry a criminal, Kyle. You married a leader, he snapped. No, Vanessa said quietly. You married a thief. He pointed at her. This is a setup. You all want to take what's mine. I stood slowly. It was never yours, son. It was the family's. You were trusted to manage it, alongside me and your aunt. That's what leadership means. Not ownership, not power, but service. Kyle's eyes burned into mine. You don't get to talk about service. You retired. You walked away. I stepped up. I did what had to be done. By breaking the law. He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He looked around the table and realized, maybe for the first time, that no one was in his corner. Even Erin had set her fork down. Trevor shook his head. Man, I always thought you were a snake, but I never thought you'd eat your own family to get ahead. Kyle's jaw clenched. I'm calling my lawyer, he muttered, backing away from the table. This is character assassination. No, Kyle, I said. This is exposure. I pulled out a small digital recorder and pressed play. The room filled with his voice, recorded 3 weeks ago, bragging at a campaign event about streamlining family wealth and how sometimes the old guard needs to be removed. He hadn't noticed Vanessa standing near the back with her phone, recording the whole thing. He froze. Everyone heard it. His voice. His words. No way to spin it. Chelsea looked like she might throw up. And that's when Kyle lost it. He lunged across the table, his hand grabbing the will, his eyes wild. I blocked him with my arm and stood firm. Don't, I said. But it was too late. He ripped the will in half. Right there in front of everyone. And then Lindsay screamed. The ripped will fluttered to the floor like confetti at a funeral. For a second, no one moved. Lindsay stood frozen, her mouth still open in a silent scream. Vanessa's hands shot to her face. Trevor muttered, "Holy hell," and leaned back like he expected a punch to fly. I bent down slowly and picked up the torn halves, holding them with the same care I once held Kyle when he was a baby. Back when he still looked at me like I was 10 feet tall. Back before ambition turned him into someone I didn't recognize. You just committed a felony, I said quietly, in front of 7 witnesses. Kyle's chest was heaving. It's a fake, he growled. You think some dusty paper from a shoebox means anything? I'm the legal trustee. It's already been filed. It's done. Vanessa stood. Not anymore, it isn't. I've already contacted our attorney. The moment I saw your version, I knew something was wrong. He's filed an injunction with the probate court. You'll be getting served this week. Kyle laughed bitterly. You people think this is about justice. You just don't like that I'm the one who finally made the family fund useful. Useful? Chelsea snapped. You bought a Tesla last month, with consulting fees. You think no one noticed? His jaw twitched. You're a politician now, I said. You thought you could maneuver around the law. But you forgot one thing, son. He glared at me. What? I'm the law. A tense silence. Then the front door creaked. Everyone turned. Erin was walking away, shoulders tight, face blank. Erin, wait. Lindsay called after her. She didn't turn around. I can't watch this, she said, and stepped out into the cold February night, slamming the door behind her. Kyle took a breath like he was about to launch into a full speech, then saw Chelsea glaring at him, tears welling in her eyes. You said you were protecting the family, she said. You were protecting yourself. I was building something for us, he said, voice lowering, like that made it noble. Don't act like you didn't know what was going on. Chelsea took a step back. I didn't marry a criminal, Kyle. I married a leader. He looked at her for a long moment, then muttered, Guess that was your mistake. With that, he turned, snatched his coat off the chair, and stormed out. Silence again. Vanessa slowly picked up her wine glass. "Well," she said, "Happy President's Day." Lindsay sat down, hands trembling. "What happens now?" I stared at the torn will in my hands. "Now," I said, "now we go to war." Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat alone at the dining table, lights low, roast untouched. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was the quiet before a verdict. I took the two halves of the will and laid them flat on the kitchen island. Scotch tape wouldn't fix this. Not legally, not symbolically. I needed to show the court what Kyle really was. And I had a plan. Vanessa texted me. "He's going to retaliate. Be ready." I texted back. "I'm counting on it." The next morning, I drove downtown to my old law office. I still had friends there, lawyers who owed me favors, and clerks who still called me Mr. Grant out of habit. My old paralegal, a sharp-as-nails woman named Beth, met me in the lobby. "You're stirring up dust, Mitchell." "Dust needs clearing," I said. "I need the top forensic document analyst you've got. Someone who can prove this isn't just forgery. It's fraud with intent to defraud a trust." Beth nodded. "I know a guy. Retired FBI." She handed me a business card. I read the name. My stomach flipped. Perfect. But just as I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail. One message. I hit play. Kyle's voice came through. Cold. Controlled. "Dad, if you go through with this, I swear to God, you'll regret it." Click. I replayed Kyle's voicemail 3 times. Each time, his voice cut a little deeper. No anger. No desperation. Just cold menace. Like a man who'd already decided how far he was willing to go. "If you go through with this, I swear to God, you'll regret it." I'd spent my life defending clients from threats like that. Now my own son was the one making them. I forwarded the voicemail to myself and saved it in 3 different folders. Redundancy was a lawyer's religion. Then I called Vanessa. "He's cracking," I told her. "He thinks he can scare me into silence." "What are you going to do?" "What we were always going to do. We fight." I met the forensic analyst, Frank Delaney, at his home office in a modest ranch house outside the city. No fancy law firm. Just a long wooden desk for magnifying lamps and enough paper samples to wallpaper the Pentagon. Frank looked at the documents like a surgeon about to open a chest cavity. Original signatures, different ink. Paper matches the correct vintage. Watermarks line up. But this, he tapped Kyle's version of the will, is printed on stock that wasn't used by First Federal Bank until 9 months after the signature date. I raised an eyebrow. "And that's enough?" Frank smiled. "It's more than enough." He drafted a certified report with photo comparisons, timeline analysis, and a sworn affidavit that would crush Kyle's defense like a roach under a boot. I took the report straight to our family attorney, Scott Mendez. "You sure you want to press charges?" he asked me. "This is your son, Mitchell." I looked him dead in the eyes. "This is a crime. He didn't just betray the family. He betrayed my father's legacy. My name. Everything we built." Scott nodded. "Then let's file." By Thursday morning, the injunction was in place. Kyle's access to the family fund was frozen. Court date set. A judge would hear the case in 2 weeks. But Kyle didn't wait. That afternoon, the story broke. Headline: State Senator Kyle Grant accused of a forgery and family trust scandal. It was everywhere. Cable news, local stations, Twitter, even a podcast I didn't know existed. Chelsea called me crying. "He says you blindsided him. He says you're trying to ruin his career." "No, Chelsea," I said. "He did that all by himself." Later that night, I found an envelope taped to my front door. No stamp. No address. Inside was a photo. Me and Vanessa sitting together at a cafe last weekend. The image was grainy, but clear enough. On the back, in block letters, "You think this is about money. It's about power." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. He wanted me to know he was watching. He wanted me flinch. Instead, I turned on every light in the house and poured myself a drink. Let him watch. Let him see what a real leader looks like when he's backed into a corner. The next morning, I met Lindsay for coffee. She looked exhausted, eyes red from sleepless nights. "He's spiraling," she said. "He's calling everyone, trying to spin it as a political smear campaign. Blaming you, blaming Vanessa, even blaming Grandpa. He can't blame the dead forever," I said. "I think he's planning something, Uncle Mitch. Something big." I sipped my coffee and nodded. Let him plan. Back home, I opened the safe in my closet and pulled out the one file I'd never planned to use. Inside was a backup copy of my father's personal journal, pages filled with his thoughts on leadership, family, and most importantly, his intentions for the trust. He'd written it all down, in his own words, but as I flipped through the pages, I noticed something I hadn't before. A note scribbled in the margin, dated just 3 days before he died. "If Kyle ever tries to take it all for himself, show them the letter in the back of the ledger." The ledger. I hadn't seen it in years, but I knew exactly where it was. In the attic, in the locked trunk. I grabbed the keys, and then the power went out. The lights went out with a sharp click. No warning, just sudden darkness, the kind that feels heavy, like something pressing down on your chest. I stood in the hallway, holding the trunk key, frozen in place. Outside, the wind had picked up, sharp gusts slicing through the February evening like razors. But it wasn't the weather that made the hairs on my neck stand up. It was the silence. My house is old, built in 1919. Every floorboard creaks when you breathe too hard. But right now it was too quiet. I walked to the breaker panel in the garage, flashlight in hand. Flipped every switch. Nothing. The neighborhood wasn't out. My neighbor's porch lights were still glowing across the street. This was personal. "Kyle." I went back inside and locked the front door behind me. Then I climbed the attic steps, one hand on the rail, the other gripping my old service flashlight like a weapon. The attic hadn't changed since my wife passed. Dusty boxes, old Christmas ornaments, a crib we'd never thrown away. I found the trunk beneath a pile of army blankets. The key fit perfectly. Inside, my father's ledger. Black leather, heavy worn. Pages filled with numbers, handwritten notes, names of banks, stock holdings, and there it was. A sealed envelope tucked into the back cover. It was addressed to me, to Mitchell. "If Kyle ever tries to take what doesn't belong to him, show them this." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a 2-page letter in my father's handwriting. It detailed conversations they'd had, Kyle pressuring him to change the terms of the trust, threats, manipulation, even attempts to isolate him from Vanessa and me. He'd refused, and Kyle had gotten angry enough to fake a new will after he died. This wasn't just evidence. It was a confession from the grave. And then I heard a noise downstairs. A door closing. Soft, deliberate. I killed the flashlight. Listened. Another noise. Footsteps. Inside my house. I pocketed the letter, grabbed the ledger, and moved to the attic door, holding my breath. The floor below creaked. Someone was here, and they weren't knocking. I took a deep breath and stepped silently down the stairs. My feet hit the bottom step without a sound. The house was pitch black, but my instincts were wide awake. I hadn't felt this alert since my courtroom days, when a hostile witness would shift in the chair and you just knew the lie was coming. Only now, the lie wasn't on the record. It was walking through my home. I crept down the hallway, every step measured, silent. I knew these floors. Every squeak, every knot in the wood. Whoever was in here didn't. There, a shadow moved past the kitchen doorway. Too tall to be Chelsea. Too confident to be a thief. I held the ledger close to my chest, still sealed in the envelope my father had written. This was it. The thing Kyle didn't want the world to see. And I was holding it like a piece of TNT, with a lit fuse. I moved toward the kitchen. Slowly, carefully. And then, crash. A picture frame hit the tile. Glass shattered. The shadow flinched. That told me something. He wasn't a pro. He was nervous. "Kyle," I said flatly, stepping into view. "You're not as clever in the dark as you think." He froze mid-step, face lit only by the fridge light. eyes wide, mouth open. Give me the letter, Dad. No, I don't want to hurt you. Then you shouldn't have forged a will. He stepped closer. I could see the sweat on his forehead. His hands were trembling. Not fear. Rage. You don't get it, he hissed. That fund was never going to be enough. Not for what I'm building. What are you building, Kyle? I asked. A dynasty, a campaign, or a prison sentence. I did what needed to be done. No, I said. You did what was easy, what was selfish. He lunged. I moved fast, threw the ledger into the open cabinet above the fridge, and slammed the door shut just as his shoulder hit mine. We tumbled to the floor, crashing into the table. Chairs skidded across the tile. He scrambled to his feet first. I'm warning you, he growled. I will burn everything down before I let you take this from me. I stood slowly, hand bracing the counter. You already did. He turned, ready to rip open the cabinet, but red and blue lights flashed outside the window. Sirens. Vanessa had called them. Kyle froze. Just for a second. Long enough. I reached for the cabinet, but he grabbed a knife and pointed it at me. The blade gleamed under the kitchen light. Nothing fancy, just a standard 8-inch chef's knife. But in Kyle's shaking hand, it looked like a sword. Don't move, he barked. Don't you dare. I didn't flinch. The sirens were getting closer now. Red and blue flickered across the window panes like a warning from God himself. But Kyle didn't back down. I'm serious, Dad. So am I said. Put it down. His hand trembled, but his eye stayed locked on mine. I didn't come here to hurt you. Then don't. He looked toward the cabinet where the ledger was hidden. I need that letter. You don't understand what's at stake. No, I said quietly. You don't. Footsteps pounded up the front porch. A voice called through the door. This is the police. Step away from the man and drop the weapon. Kyle's eyes widened. His grip tightened. I took a slow step forward. You still have a choice, son. Right now, you can be the man your grandfather wanted you to be. Or you can throw it all away. You think Grandpa was perfect, he snapped. He was ruthless. He built everything by stepping over people. And you lived under his shadow your whole life, and now you want to judge me. No, I said. I want to save you. His eyes darted between the knife and the front door. Drop it, Kyle, I said again. He blinked, and then he dropped the knife. It clattered to the tile. Seconds later, the door burst open. 2 officers rushed in with weapons drawn. I held up my hands. I'm okay. He's unarmed. Kyle didn't resist. He just stood there, shoulders heaving, as they cuffed him. The look in his eyes wasn't hate. It was something worse. Emptiness. As they read him his rights, he looked over at me. You think you won, he muttered. But this doesn't end here. No, I said. It ends in court. They walked him out the door. I stood in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by broken glass, overturned chairs, and the smell of adrenaline. I walked over to the cabinet, reached up, and pulled down the ledger. Still intact, still ready to be opened, but I didn't open it just yet. Instead, I picked up the envelope again, my father's words still echoing in my head. I placed it gently in my briefcase. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study and watched the footage from my home security cameras. Kyle pacing outside the house, picking the lock, slipping in through the side door. The look on his face when I caught him. Evidence. Enough to bury him. But when I reached the clip of him holding the knife, there was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Fear. Not of me. Of losing everything. The next morning, I met Vanessa at the courthouse. She looked at me with tired eyes and a tight smile. He's facing 3 felony charges, she said. But he's also offering a deal. What kind of deal? Vanessa hesitated. He's willing to confess to everything. If we don't submit the ledger into evidence, he'll confess. I asked slowly, as if repeating it would make it sound less absurd. Vanessa nodded. Scott got the call this morning. Kyle's lawyer says he's willing to sign a full written confession, admitting to forgery, fraud, misappropriation of trust funds. Everything. I raised an eyebrow. And in return, we don't introduce the ledger in court. Of course. That letter. My father's final warning. The one thing Kyle couldn't spin, couldn't deny. It would destroy not only his case, it'd burn his public image to ash. Once the media saw his grandfather calling him manipulative and dangerous, there'd be no political comeback. No redemption tour. Just disgrace. Why? I said. Why care now? He already lost. Vanessa exhaled. Because he's not worried about the courtroom anymore. He's worried about the world outside it. His career. His donors. The party. The silence between us stretched. He knows the public won't forgive what's in that ledger, she said softly. I looked out the window at the gray Wyoming sky. Neither will I. But I knew what she was really asking. Let him take the fall quietly. Protect the family name. Keep the pain internal. That's what old money families do, right? We bury the mess and call it closure. But Kyle hadn't just embarrassed us. He had weaponized our trust. Turned legacy into leverage. Betrayed everything the Grant family stood for: loyalty, honor, truth. And now he wanted mercy. From the man he tried to destroy. I stood and walked to my father's portrait. Hung there on the courthouse wall for 20 years. He'd been a judge. A hard one. Fair but never soft. Dad, I whispered. What would you have done? Vanessa broke the silence. Mitchell, if we go public, he'll lose everything. Not just the campaign. His career. His name. I turned slowly. And if we don't, what do we lose? She didn't answer. I opened my briefcase. Pulled out the envelope. My father's handwriting still bold after all these years. The last truth he ever gave me. I held it over the table. And then I heard the door open behind us. Footsteps. I turned. Chelsea. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept in days. She looked at me, then at the envelope in my hand. Don't destroy it, she said quietly. You need to read what's in that ledger. All of it. There's more you don't know. I narrowed my eyes. What do you mean? She swallowed hard. I think Kyle lied to me too. I stared at Chelsea like I was seeing her for the first time. You think Kyle lied to you? I asked, slowly lowering the envelope back to the table. She nodded. Her voice was thin, but steady. I knew he was ambitious. I knew he was cutting corners. But I didn't know how deep it went until I saw a wire transfer last month. What kind of transfer? $250,000, disguised as consulting fees. But the account it went to, it wasn't one of his campaign vendors. It was a private offshore account. Vanessa stiffened. You sure? Chelsea nodded. I checked twice. When I asked him about it, he told me to drop it. Said it was none of my business. That everything was handled. Typical Kyle. You think he's hiding more? I asked. Chelsea glanced at the envelope. I think whatever's in that ledger might explain where the rest of the money's gone, and who else helped him. Vanessa leaned forward. Wait, are you saying other people were involved? Chelsea hesitated. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward me. An email from one of Kyle's campaign donors. Subject: Thanks for delivering the fund access. Let me know when Phase 2 begins. Attached was a spreadsheet. Dozens of transactions. Dates. Codes. Names. Including a sitting judge. My stomach turned. This wasn't just about family money anymore. This was a conspiracy. Chelsea's hands trembled as she locked her phone. I was going to burn it. Pretend I didn't know. But then I thought about our daughter. About what kind of legacy she'd grow up with if I stayed silent. I looked down at the envelope. My father's letter suddenly felt heavier than ever. I opened it. Inside the ledger were dozens of pages of entries, names, meetings, notes. But one line, scrawled in the margins beside a November entry, stopped me cold. Kyle met with Judge Hanley privately. Said arrangements were made. Didn't trust it. Told Vanessa to look into this, if anything happens to me. Vanessa leaned over my shoulder. Judge Hanley's the one overseeing the injunction. Silence. Chelsea spoke again, this time barely a whisper. You can't take the deal, Mitchell. If you do, you're not just letting Kyle off. You are protecting everyone who helped him. The envelope now felt radioactive in my hands. I looked between the two women. I need time to think, I said. But even as I said it, I knew time had just run out, because my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new text. You open that ledger, you're next. The text burned in my hand. You open that ledger, you're next. It wasn't signed. It didn't have to be. This was bigger than Kyle. Bigger than the family fund. This was an operation. A machine built on corruption. Fueled by ambition. Protected by shadows. And now that machine had turned its attention to me. I showed the message to Vanessa and Chelsea. Vanessa didn't even blink. Let them come. We're not backing down. Chelsea hesitated, but then nodded. They've already destroyed too much. I looked down at the ledger. Pages of truth. Pages people were willing to kill for. This, I said quietly, isn't just evidence. It's a blueprint. Every person Kyle worked with. Every deal. Every payoff. This ledger is a map straight to the rot. And maps make people nervous. I spent the next hour scanning the entire document, page by page. I backed it up on 2 encrypted drives. One went into my safe. The other? I mailed it to a trusted colleague, retired federal prosecutor Trevor Miles. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but if anything happened to me, he'd know what to do. At midnight, I sat in my study alone. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. And then the back door creaked. Not slammed. Not knocked. Just creaked. I grabbed the fireplace poker and moved slowly toward the kitchen. My heart beat hard, but my hands were steady. I've stared down murderers in court. I wasn't about to let cowards in the dark rattle me. The kitchen was empty, but the door was ajar. I stepped outside. No one in sight. Then I saw it. A bullet. One round. Placed neatly on my patio table. Message received. I brought it inside, placed it next to the ledger, and took a photo. Sent it to Scott Mendez with the message. Add intimidation to the list. They're escalating. He replied 2 minutes later. Then so should we. The next morning, Vanessa and I walked into the courthouse. We bypassed the offer. No plea deal. No silence. We were going public, with everything. Chelsea released the email from Kyle's donor. I submitted the forensic report and the original will. Vanessa filed a motion to recuse Judge Hanley, citing conflict of interest, with the ledger as supporting evidence. And then, we scheduled a press conference. All of it was going to come to light. But just before we stepped onto the courthouse steps, Scott came running toward us, his face pale. I just got off the phone with the district clerk, he said breathlessly. What is it? I asked. The evidence room was broken into last night. The original will? The ledger. He swallowed. They're gone. Gone. The word echoed in my mind like a gunshot in a canyon. The ledger. The will. The hard evidence. Vanished from the courthouse, vault like they were never there. I stood there on the courthouse steps, my fingers curling into fists. How? I asked Scott. How does something that important just disappear? He shook his head, eyes wide. They bypassed the alarm system. No signs of forced entry. This was inside help. Judge Hanley. Of course. Vanessa swore under her breath. They're erasing the trail, Mitch. One document at a time. Chelsea looked like she was going to be sick. What now? They'll call us crazy. Say we made it all up. Not on my watch. I took a breath. We go forward. We don't stop. That press conference is happening, with or without the ledger. They'll discredit us, Scott said. Then we give them something they can't erase. We walked into that press conference like we were marching into a courtroom. Microphones clicked on. Reporters raised cameras. I stepped up to the podium. My name is Mitchell Grant, I began. I'm a retired attorney, a father, and a witness to a crime that didn't just target my family. It targeted truth itself. I laid out everything. The forged will, the fund fraud, the forensic evidence, the recorded voicemail, the bribe emails. I didn't mention the bullet. That was personal. But I did say this. They tried to silence us. to erase the truth. But I still have my voice, and I won't stop speaking. Vanessa followed me, then Chelsea. One by one, we told our story. And when the cameras shut off, something strange happened. People listened. An independent reporter asked for copies of the evidence. A whistleblower hotline rang 5 times within the hour. An anonymous email came in that night from someone claiming to work in the judge's office. Subject line: Hanley's been covering for Kyle for months. Attached was a scanned memo. It was a court order dated 3 weeks ago, sealing access to Kyle's financial audit. Signed by Hanley. Suppressed. Hidden. But now exposed. I forwarded it to the district attorney and backed it up in 5 separate cloud drives. Vanessa did the same. The tide was shifting. But victory never comes without pushback. That night, as I returned home, I found my living room ransacked. Drawers pulled out. Pictures smashed. My safe open. But they missed something. The encrypted USB I mailed to Trevor Miles, still safe in his hands. He called me after midnight. "Mitchell," he said, "you were right to send this. I've looked through the ledger backup, and I found something you didn't mention." "What?" He paused. "Your name's in it." "My name's in it." I said it out loud, even though Trevor had already confirmed it. My voice sounded hollow. "Yes," he said. "One entry. Late in the ledger. Dated 2 years before your father passed. It says, Mitchell approved the transfer to Shell account XN48. Asked no questions." I gripped the edge of my desk. "That's not possible. I never signed anything like that." Trevor was quiet for a beat. "It's written in your father's hand, and there's a copy of the transfer order attached. It has your signature." My mind reeled. A fog of memory, half buried under years of court battles and paperwork. "I need a copy," I said. "You'll have it in 10 minutes." When the email came through, I opened the scanned page, and there it was. My name, my signature, but I didn't recognize it. Forgery? Or had I signed something blindly? Trusted my father without reading every detail? Vanessa called seconds later. I saw it. "Don't panic." Easy for you to say. My name's attached to a fraudulent transfer. "But your intentions weren't," she said. "You've lived by the law your entire life. You think this changes that?" I looked at the screen again. Shell account XN48. The same one Chelsea mentioned last week. Kyle hadn't just stolen the fund. He'd used my old signature as a shield. He'd tied me into the crime without me ever knowing. "They'll use this against me," I said. "Yes," Vanessa admitted, "but not if we get ahead of it." "How?" She took a breath. "We go public again. You admit it. You say you trusted your father. You were misled. You never authorized misuse. The only way through this is full transparency." My stomach turned. Every instinct told me to hide, to fight this in private. But I knew she was right. Kyle had built his empire on manipulation. I would burn it down with truth. I started drafting a public statement, and then I got another email. No subject, no body, just one image attached. A photo of my granddaughter, walking home from school. Alone. My hand clenched the mouse as I stared at the photo. My granddaughter Lila, 6 years old, backpack too big for her small shoulders, walking home from school, unaware that someone had been close enough to capture that moment and send it to me as a threat. I felt something in me snap. This wasn't about the money anymore. Not the trust. Not even my name. This was war. Vanessa was the first to arrive at the house. She took one look at the screen and went pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "This is real now. Physical. They're scared," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "They're desperate. They're monsters, Mitchell." I forwarded the image to Scott with one line. "Secure protection for Lila. Now." He responded in under 30 seconds. Already on it. Moving her and Chelsea to safe housing under police watch. I called Chelsea. She was crying but composed. "I saw it too," she said. "Kyle didn't send it. He wouldn't, he couldn't, not Lila." "Then someone he's in bed with did," I said. "And that makes him just as responsible." She was quiet. Then softly, End this, Mitchell. I turned back to the press release I'd been drafting. Confession. The truth. My name was tied to a fraudulent transfer. A mistake. A manipulation. But mine nonetheless. If I published this, it would give Kyle and his allies ammunition. They'd say I was the real villain. They'd spin it like I was trying to shift blame onto my son to cover my own guilt. But if I didn't, they'd win. The corruption would stay buried. The threats would keep coming. I looked at Vanessa. What would Dad have done? I asked. She smiled bitterly. He would have stood alone in the fire and dared them to throw more. I took a deep breath and hit send. The statement went to every major news outlet, my law alumni network, and the State Bar Association. My truth. On the record. 30 minutes later, it was viral. I was trending. And that's when the knock came at the front door. I opened it slowly. A man in a black suit handed me a plain envelope. No name. Just one line handwritten on the front. You were warned. I opened it. Inside was a flash drive. The flash drive was warm in my hand. I stared at it, the words on the envelope echoing in my head like a countdown. You were warned. Was it a threat? A trap? Or worse, the final truth? Vanessa stood beside me, arms crossed tightly, like she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. Don't plug it in here, she said. Air gap it. Smart. She always was. I grabbed my old laptop, the one I hadn't connected to the internet in 5 years. No Bluetooth. No Wi-Fi. Just power and paranoia. I inserted the drive. One folder. No password. Just a single file. Confession.mp4. Vanessa looked at me. You ready? No. I hit play anyway. The video began grainy surveillance footage. A hotel room. Kyle sat at a table, sleeves rolled up, drink in hand. Across from him sat a man in a gray suit. The audio was clear. Kyle leaned in. The fun's mine. My dad won't get in the way. He's sentimental, but he's blind. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him. The man nodded. What about your aunt? We'll handle her. Once I'm in control, the money flows. The date stamp? 2 months before my father died. Vanessa gasped. I felt everything in me freeze. The video cut to another scene. Kyle on the phone. This time it was worse. I forged the damn thing. Who cares? Grandpa was barely conscious when he signed the last document. Mitchell doesn't have the stomach to fight me. He laughed. Cold. Confident. I built this image. Clean. Electable. And I'll bury anyone who tries to rip it down, including my own blood. The file ended. Silence filled the room. I took a long breath, my pulse hammering in my ears. This is it, I said. This is the nail in the coffin. Vanessa nodded slowly. We leak it. Tonight. We copied the file 3 times. Sent it to our attorney, our press contact, and Trevor Miles. By dawn, the world would know who Kyle really was. But then, a second folder appeared on the drive. It hadn't been there before. I clicked it open. One file. A scan of a document. Last will and testament. James Grant, unfiled revision. Vanessa leaned over my shoulder. Her breath caught. Mitchell, this one names Kyle as sole heir. It's dated 2 weeks before Dad died. I stared at the screen, and the signature looked real. I stared at the screen, heart pounding in my chest. Last will and testament. James Grant, unfiled revision. Vanessa leaned closer. It can't be real. Dad would never, not after what he told us. But the signature, shaky, but unmistakable, matched our father's hand. Dated 2 weeks before his death. This version gave everything to Kyle. Every cent, every share. It removed all mention of the trust, dissolved the fund, and stripped Vanessa and me of any oversight. It was legal, brutally clean. Vanessa's voice trembled. Why would Dad do this? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Was it possible? Had Kyle worn him down? Played him like he played the rest of us? Or worse, had our father seen something in Kyle that we never did? I dug deeper into the file metadata, modified just 2 days ago. This wasn't scanned from a bank vault. It was added to the flash drive recently, which meant one of 2 things. It was real, and our father kept it hidden. Or it was another fake. Vanessa whispered, "We need forensic analysis." "Now." I nodded. "We have Trevor. He'll know what's real." I picked up the phone and dialed his number. Voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I emailed him the file and typed, "Urgent. I need verification on this signature immediately." As I hit send, I felt it in my gut. That sinking sensation lawyers know too well. The moment before the verdict, Vanessa sat down beside me, hands buried in her face. What if he gave up on us? What if he thought Kyle was the future? I looked at her. Then the man who raised us wasn't who he thought he was. Silence. Then my phone buzzed. New email. From Trevor. I opened it. Subject: Mitchell, we have a problem. The message was short. The signature is real. But there's more. Check the margin notes on page 3. I opened the PDF again and zoomed in. Faint pencil handwriting. If Kyle fails to uphold the fund's mission, this revision is void. Mitchell is to decide. Vanessa leaned over, reading it aloud. You're the fallback. I exhaled slowly. My father hadn't chosen Kyle. He had tested him. And now it was up to me to judge the result. I stood up, resolve hardening in my chest. We go public. With everything. Vanessa nodded. But before we could act, my phone rang again. Lock number. I answered. A voice whispered, "You have 1 hour to drop this. Or we release something on Lila. Something you can't bury." I stood in my study, staring out the window as the seconds ticked by. 1 hour. That's what they gave me. 1 hour to silence the truth or risk my granddaughter's name being dragged through the filth Kyle and his allies had created. It was never about Lila, of course. It was about control. The same control my son had chased his entire life. The same control my father tried to manage from the grave. But not anymore. I dialed Vanessa. They threatened her. Her voice was cold steel. Then we end it now. I opened the folder one last time. The video confession. The forged documents. The backup of the ledger. The scanned revision of the will, complete with my father's final clause, giving me the power to decide. And I chose. I forwarded it all. To the media. To the district attorney. To the state bar. To every journalist who ever wrote about Kyle's career. And finally, I posted it on my personal website. My son's empire built on lies. By the time the hour ended, it was everywhere. The backlash was swift. Judge Hanley resigned within 24 hours. The campaign donors went silent. Kyle's office released a vague denial, but it collapsed under the weight of the footage, the forensic signatures, the bribe trails. They couldn't spin it. They couldn't bury it. And they couldn't threaten me anymore, because I'd already lost too much to care. Chelsea and Lila were placed under permanent protection. Vanessa stood by my side as I gave interviews, testified, and reopened the trust under court supervision. We rebuilt it, brick by brick, this time in the light. I wish I could tell you Kyle came to his senses, that he apologized. But people like Kyle don't change when they lose. They change when they're exposed. He's facing multiple charges now: fraud, conspiracy, evidence tampering. His political career is over. His legacy shattered. As for me, I walk into every room with my head high. Not because I won, but because I didn't break. Leadership isn't about inheritance. It's about responsibility. And I finally lived up to mine. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.